let's talk to Dan Arbel, Middle East analyst and former Israeli diplomat. Dan, we spoke just a few weeks ago. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Shall we start with Mr. Netanyahu's reference to the Islamic Republic of Britain? Now, it's one thing for this to be said by extremist ministers Smotrich or Ben Gvir, but another from the Prime Minister himself. What does this say about current relations, the state of relations between Britain and Israel?
You know, we have to look at everything that is happening today in Israel, including our next topic in the West Bank, as through the prism of the upcoming Israeli elections. Everything is game now. It's election season. And in order to score points or cheap political points, Netanyahu will go to great lengths to do so. And so I wouldn't be alarmed by Netanyahu's comments. I think he's, playing to his base, wanting to show that, he's being tough vis-a-vis the UK for whatever reason. I would not really make too much of a big thing out of it. It plays to fears and concerns that exist among many Israelis about that Europe is the Muslim population of Europe in general, and the UK and France in particular, perhaps is growing, which in turn may have a greater political impact on the nature of the policies of these countries towards Israel in the future. But I think that Netanyahu's comments today should be taken in that very narrow perspective of just playing up to his base and scoring political points.
Right. I'm just wondering why then they would think that the person who has helped to plunge Israel's relationships with France and Britain, and indeed to some parts of the American public, into this parlor state, is the person they should turn to if they want a change in those relationships.
So, I think that one of the flaws in this government headed by Netanyahu in the last 4 years is the fact that foreign policy has basically all but fallen apart, and Israel finds itself diplomatically isolated around the world with very few friends compared to 2022 or 2023. And therefore, again, this is part of what's being debated now during the election campaign. And of course, Netanyahu's critics are finding this very ripe, fertile ground to attack the prime minister. Certainly, Israel's foreign policy needs to be repaired, and Israel's relations with countries around the world and in Europe particularly need to be re-examined and brought back to normal after a very tough time during these last 3 or 4 years.
Right, and one image that will further damage the reputation of Israel outside the country is that of Qusra, this West Bank village where a dozen Palestinian households have been besieged by some extremist settlers. That's how they've been described by Mike Huckabee, the American ambassador to Israel, who normally supports almost everything Netanyahu does. But interestingly, the IDF appears now ready to crack down on those settlers. What do you think's changed?
I think that the international reaction, and especially the one by U.S. Ambassador Huckabee, have brought the message home to the government and to the IDF of the need to crack down more seriously on what's going on in Qusra, because certainly this situation is very disturbing. The fact that the IDF has not been able to or unwilling to bring a resolution of this standoff at this home in the West Bank is something that should not happen. And Israel should not let these very small amount of extremists dictate policy. Unfortunately, under this government, and again, because of the upcoming elections, the IDF finds the atmosphere to be very, more. There's less support that the IDF is getting from the political echelons to crack down more severely on the settlers, extremist settlers. And I think that the U.S. reaction is definitely causing IDF to change its mode of operation and to crack down on this, what's going on in Qusra.
I mean, the rapid expansion of settlements in the occupied West Bank under this particular government has perhaps emboldened these settlers, and Netanyahu's tentativeness, I suppose unwillingness to confront them, I presume is because of the composition of his cabinet. But how much support do the extremist settlers have among the Israeli population more generally?
I didn't see recent polls about it, but certainly I don't think that the extremists enjoy wide public support, and I think that even within their own communities, they're not looked upon very positively. And I think that Huckabee himself retracted some of his comments by saying that it's not all of the settler community, but it's a small group within the settler community. Definitely, the issue of settlers' violence is not something that is viewed positively in Israel. And I think that with the new government in place, I think there will be greater and more stronger punishing, and there will be also a more serious cracking down on such activities, trying to bring it to an end, or at least making sure that those culpable would be jailed or tried or taken care of. In that sense. Right now in the political atmosphere, that's not happening, but I think that it may happen once there's a change in government after the October elections.
And talking of which, Dan, how much political control is there over the military? Because, of course, in every multi-party democracy, there's a separation of powers, but the military serve at the pleasure of the elected officials. And just looking at that situation in Qusra, in the occupied West Bank, it began a few days ago. It was at the weekend on Sunday when the settlers blocked the road to the Palestinian families' homes, and they disabled or cut off the power on water supplies. And then the first Israeli soldiers who turned up at the scene actually stood alongside the settlers and prayed with them. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's an excellent observation, because as you said, the government does not actually dictate to the soldier on the ground how to behave. Yet the soldiers on the ground find themselves in this atmosphere where the government is allowing these settlers to run free and do whatever they please, or not, or act without impunity, and that gives that soldier on the ground kind of the sense that he can take his time. They can help the settlers or not stand in their way. This is not justifiable, and this is something that should not happen. And actually, these soldiers should be punished for their behavior. But I think that the sense is that there's an atmosphere which makes it more conducive for certain personnel in the IDF to act in that way, and that's very regretful, and should not be the case.
All right, Dan Arbel, Middle East analyst and former Israeli diplomat, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio. Thank you. Good to talk to you.